Okay, guys, we are on another podcast of the NOS series. And Steve, do you know what NOS stands for? Have you heard about the new series?
I did. I listened to the first episode with Jen. Really
Right.
enjoyed it. And it's No One's Special. And I think it's a great and accurate title for.
Nice. How does it make you feel to be referred to as no one special?
I've known that my whole life.
That's funny. You guys listening to this can't see this because we record with video, but we post audio. But Steve is sitting with an open window, his back to a window, so he looks like he's in the witness protection program.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
They can't see that.
We just need to modulate your voice, and
Right.
I'm Steve, and it's Staszower, right?
Right. That's close enough.
Close enough. How do you pronounce it?
Staszower.
Staszower.
Yeah.
Okay, that was close too. That was good too. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job
Sound like you
pronouncing.
put an H in there.
Staszower. Nice.
Yes, there you go.
Beautiful. I apologize for that.
No problem. No problem.
So a little background. So the neat thing about this one here, and I randomly pick people who like take the time to like write me little notes. Like right after last year's camp in Vegas, you had an interesting incident, and you messaged me about it. And like I remember all these things. People think, and they should know just by my typos, my spelling errors, my grammar, my swearing, that I don't outsource my social media. I do it all myself. And I have been before. And it's funny because I get a lot of companies, say, "Hey, we'll take this off your hands. We specialize in this." And I just can never do that because I really believe for the relationship I'm trying to create with people, it's disingenuous to have some bot answer your shit. And it's time consuming. It's a whole other fucking job for me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To manage it with all the different accounts and all the different divisions of the company. And my whole point to that is I read everything, I get around to it. And I remembered, your thing was last July or August, the camp.
That's right.
Yeah. And I remembered it. So when I started this, I remembered, oh, fuck, I'm going to hit up Steve. But why don't we tell everybody a little bit about yourself, specifically, obviously, related to why you came to the camp or the self-defense, or your interest in the connection with that. And then we'll get into your story.
Okay. Well, I've been into martial arts and combatives since I was about 8. My dad started me off in judo. I did 2 years in judo, and this was like old school. It was very old school. I mean, I remember being 8 and being put on my knuckles on a wooden floor.
Right.
If you didn't perform well, or you mount anything like that. Same with the karate school I was put into. This is back in New York, back in the 70s. A lot of discipline. I thought it was great. Gave me a great start. Discipline, self-esteem, self-respect, treating others with respect. Did, I think, 4 years of Goju karate, went on to do some kickboxing, then Krav Maga about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Just, I've always been interested in that stuff. Not that I enjoy fighting, I just enjoy learning the combatives.
Right.
And you distinguish between the arts and, fighting for your life. I enjoy both sides of it. Right.
It's just like a little insert here. You can't, and people know me as the guy that's always doing the rants about the categories and separate them and keep it, because our specialty is very specific to personal safety and my clients are law enforcement, military, and citizens and martial arts trainers who want to incorporate the spear system and do all that. So we have a very like niche or niche, depending on what part of the world you come from, the market, and that's what we focus on. But like if I go to do a workout in the garage today and I'm hitting the bag or I'm doing some kicks or I'm stretching, I mean, that's the art part. That's the sport part. That's the culture part. So I'm putting it out there that I have zero issues with anybody practicing anything. The concern I always had, because I've seen, victims of violence up close, emotional, psychological, or photos or videos of people who just did not figure out how to fight back effectively. And so that was really that separation where, many years ago, inspired by, and you've heard the story, I'm sure, at the camp or what have you, of me training one of my students, and he got into a true self-defense bully situation in school, and he got dropped by the guy because my approach was too, what's the word I'm looking for? It was too sequential, as in he does this, you do that, and which is this kind of compartmentalized way that most martial arts are taught. It wasn't scenario specific, but
it tends to be more technique based.
Right, and it so wasn't dynamic and flowing, and back then, like, nobody was talking about the emotional psychological assault. And that was the big thing, is a lot of people, even trained gladiators, like pro boxers, MMA guys, whatever, those people can still perform poorly under duress, right? Because they're inexperienced, they haven't stress inoculated. And so that was the whole thing in the 80s of why I started force on force scenario training, recognizing that if you can't emotionally, psychologically give yourself permission to be in the fight, that's going to suppress all of your physical talent that you had cultivated in kind of this cooperative environment. And that's why you can just see it, like the way people shadow box and warm up, and then they go out to the fight, and you see like 10% of their arsenal on display with a bunch of issues in they're all aspects of how fear afflicts performance. But that's a whole other
category. It's like you point out, Tony, that category 1 and category 4 are a world away from each other. And There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong at all with category 1. I did it for many years. I think it played a huge role in my life. Like I said, in terms of self-respect, self-discipline, stuff that helps in life.
Right.
But category 1, other than teaching you maybe, how to put your weight into a punch or something like that, isn't much use in category 4.
Yeah. And I will say, just like to all the martial artists listening to this, there are always exceptions. I was doing a private course last week where I brought up Mas Oyama, who developed Kyokushinkai karate. And one of the legendary stories of Oyama was that he killed a bull with a reverse punch.
Right.
And so I talked about that because we were just talking about unconscious bias and how it can interfere. And unconscious bias is when you've got this like diehard love for your martial art or your training, and where someone's saying, hey, that's really good, but you should look at this and consider this because this might help you get home to your family. You're like, no, jiu-jitsu is the answer. No, Krav Maga is the answer. No, Thai boxing is the answer. And that's what it's just for people who aren't familiar with the categories. That was my whole thing, is like you separate stuff into categories, and then you can kind of figure out their what I call the 3 R's: realistic, relevant, and rigorous, the quotient of the 3 R's as it applies to category 4, which is a real violent encounter that the bad guy starts. So if you're an Uber driver and you study jiu-jitsu, and somebody robs you, in the back of your car, your jiu-jitsu had no application, right? Or your taekwondo, or your boxing, and it's like looking at it like that. Now people hear that and they go, he just said jiu-jitsu sucks. I said, no, I said, if you're an Uber driver, right? And that, if you're getting defensive when I explain that, you have an unconscious bias. The conscious bias is, I love doing this. Oh, wait a minute. Fuck, I never even thought about that. What would I do at gunpoint? Okay, I'll just give my money. But what if he decided to take me to a secondary crime scene and put me in the trunk? What if, like, what do I do? Do I know anything about guns? Do I know anything about guns? And suddenly if you start to unravel that onion, you start to get a fear spike. And they'll suddenly go, what do I know about fear? What do I know about adaptation and mindset and distractions? And like, is there a system out there that actually, has studied this for decades and could fast track me to at least have some, hello, that's what we do. So my point being, everyone listening to this, is that and I wanted to say something to you because you said like, hey, maybe category 1 will teach you to do this, but it won't have an application. I believe, just to be clear, that all 3 categories, category 1, all martial arts, category 2, all combat sports, category 3, reality-based self-defense, that they all teach you something you can possibly, and the operative word there is possibly, use in category 4 when the attack happens. So
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you learn something about self-awareness and balance and strength and endurance and how to generate force, all of those skills, if through your sparring you learned how to stay calm under pressure, all of that in category 4. If you learned how to palm strike somebody in the face or kick somebody in the nuts or throw somebody, all of that, right? Certain types of sparring, like if you're a Thai boxer or MMA, that's going to bode well for you, that experience in a confrontation that gets physical, because you're used to that, right? That contact. Yes. What all the systems are missing is a deeper dive into the emotional psychological arena and how stress afflicts performance. And then also in understanding what bad guys want, what they don't want, understanding the culture and the psychology of violence. And some of this stuff can be learned super quickly. And I would like to think, and I'm way past the Oyama story, but I want to get back to that because, so here I was with this group of like really hard, experienced war fighters, and each one of them had, some type of personal bias as to what combative or martial art, they preferred. And I would gently remind them that violence doesn't really care what style you study. The objective is what is the end state? How do I get to safety? What is the safest thing I could do right here? And Oyama's name came up as an example that here's a guy that reputedly killed a bull with a reverse punch. And if you've ever seen a picture of Oyama, his fist was the size of our heads, right? It was just massive. He was a big, big man. Developed Kyokushinkai karate, which is very hardcore karate style. In researching a little bit more, what I discovered, and again, I don't know what's real because hashtag the internet, but what I discovered over the years ago was that this was a bull. He didn't kill a bull like, oh my God, animal activists and all this, because really you can't kill tofu. You can't do the same demo on a big block of, did anyone laugh at that? Or I found that funny.
That would actually be really funny though.
Yeah, good. But the bull was slated for slaughter. It was part of it. Wasn't like he went out and just killed a bull on the side of the road. So it was sedated and it was held by 2 guys by the horns, and he punched it. And I go, so like if you had to fight, so Steve, if I said, hey, that guy wants to fight you, I'm going to sedate him and I'm going to get 2 of my guys to hold him in the arms, you punch him, how hard would that be?
Exactly. And that was, I hope I wasn't misunderstood. I completely agree with you. I was not saying that categories 1, 2, or 3 don't play a role in 4.
Right.
But if you freeze with fear, for instance, it does not matter how good your reverse punch or your hook or your arm bar is, because it's not going to happen.
Right. And yeah, and I wasn't, and the reason I'm telling the Oyama story wasn't that, but I do know that audio, we don't see our face, our smile, our body language, gestures. So I wanted to make clear for people out there, first of all, remember, if any of us on any of my shows say something where you get like this adrenaline dump or sense of defensiveness or defiance, like that's a call to action for a little introspection. Like, why would that even bother you? But the deeper point about Oyama was this, and this is actually the funny flip side of that. So I set it up and I go, so really, how hard is it to fucking punch somebody in the face if they're sedated being held by 2 other guys? Not impressive at all. Then everyone looks at me like trying to figure out where I'm going. And I go, but still, who the fuck wants to fight a guy that can kill a bull with a reverse punch? Right? And the point is, the guy had some serious power, and he was a big guy, and he was fast, and he was strong. And if you've ever watched the Kyokushinkai fighters, I mean, they're relentless and fearless, and their leg kicks and punching, and so they're badass martial art. And this is the whole thing, is like, what people don't get is when I say things that are provocative, I'm a huge martial art fan. I just understand the category, so I can enjoy it like a TV channel. Oh, I want comedy. Oh, I want action. Oh, I want oh, I'm now going to watch. This is a story about. This is a movie about Hitler in World War II. Oh, here's a documentary. Like the documentary is always going to be a little creepier because you go, this is real, right?
Right.
And that's all I'm saying is like category 4 is the fucking documentary. Right?
Well, and when, for instance, when if I go up against my bob or a heavy bag and I'm practicing my hooks for use in category 4, I'm going back to I don't know how you consider but do you consider Krav Maga 3, category 3?
I do.
Okay. So I'm going to category 3 for category 4.
Right. Right. And again, this may not translate well over audio, but any system that, so the way we do stuff for category 4 is everything we do, we start off with like every drill will start off balanced emotionally, psychologically, physically. And every drill will also start with the bad guy who's determining location or level of violence or the initial move. Even if you were practicing a preemptive strike, we're taking into consideration. And so it's a whole different way to look at it. Whereas when you're studying anything, any martial art, very often, and this is an exaggerated example, if you want to practice a certain kick or an elbow or punch, you ask somebody to hold a pad a certain way. And I understand that is necessary to develop your technique, but you'll often see that in the self-defense demos of all those systems where the role player has almost zero movement. You know, they present a target and then they hang out there. And if you just look at that, it's one of the things I've been telling people for 30 years. If you want to kind of get a sense of what the efficacy, the theoretical efficacy of a system is, just watch these self-defense demos, but only watch the role player. Watch if the role player's movement is very static, very stylized, or very cooperative. You know, like usually that's done so that somebody can get their moves in and make the guy doing the demo look good, right? And if you look at a lot of our force on force stuff online, everyone looks like shit. Right. And I've
that's
had
what real fights look like.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not graceful.
Bingo. So, what got you to, let's jump ahead. What got you to the summer camp?
You know, about 9 years ago, I attended one of Peyton Quinn's camps.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're familiar with him. You're both legends out there in this stuff.
Thank you.
And he, stuff I learned there really changed the way I looked at violence.
Right.
You know, and it was the first time I ever did Bullet Man training.
Right.
Which I know some people have issues with. I think it's great, frankly. It's not the same as high gear training, but it's pretty damn good. It certainly gets you that adrenaline dump, and you learn really fast how. It was actually the second time in my life that I had tachypsyche. You know, which was the whole
that's fancy word, folks, for everything goes into slow motion. Right.
Right. So that was only the second time in my whole life that happened to me. And that happened during one of the fights. And I can tell you about that later if you want, but it was a huge learning experience. Did that. I did one of Tim Larkin's classes, actually 2 of them.
Right.
And you had him on as a guest. That was a great show. You and him are it's kind of like you were saying during the show, technically in a way you're competitors, but you're really not.
Right.
You guys are really on the same page.
Yeah.
And I had wanted to do one of your class. I still remember, I don't know, this was like 25 years ago, seeing one of your ads in Black Belt magazine. And my memory is kind of vague. I just remember it kind of being like a black and white kind of grayish, like picture of people in high gear.
Right.
Saying, you know, fight wearing armor. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I have to do this. At the time I was living in California and you were teaching, I think it was like Pennsylvania. Were you ever in Pennsylvania?
We taught all over the place. So I you know, I'm like 20 years old, whatever. I couldn't do it. And I had wanted to do classes with you since, and I got notice that you were doing this class in Vegas. I'm like, oh, I'm going. Nice.
So that's how I wound up there.
Nice. So let's talk about the story and then dissect that. So for those of you who, hopefully everybody listening to this has at some point had a chance to check out my ATM video. Just Google Tony Blauer ATM video, and the principle behind it is really, or the premise behind it is, bad guys only want one of three things: property, body, or life. And if you understand that, and your brain understands that, you can then improvise. And I recommend you think about this in advance of the attack, so you're not just like, trying to do it in real time. You can improvise verbal strategies, distractions, and de-escalations around knowing what they don't want. So if bad guy wants your property, your body, or your life, if you're an ATM machine, it's a good guess that they want your property. It may escalate from there, and where you get injured or stabbed or shot, but it'll be in relationship to the first choice of they're at the ATM machine because they want your money when you extract it. And so you should watch the video here and understand the strategy. And the reason I'm explaining a little bit about it is because you can apply all of that to any scenario. You just reverse engineer it from there. It's not just, okay, now I know what to do in an ATM machine, but what about the rest of places, right? It's the same concept. If you're in an elevator, you may get mugged, but now is it going to, you're in a locked elevator, somebody pushes emergency stop. Now, in order to get your wallet or your purse, I'm probably going to violently assault you, right? Because we're in the sealed vault. So now it's property, body, or life, but there's probably something going to happen physical there where that may not be at an ATM. And these are things that you think about, and you don't need to think about them a lot, which is why we're very effective, like in our, even in our one-day Be Your Own Bodyguard courses, just imparting this information. And it's almost like a map, the kind of like looking at a mental blueprint for violence. So I just want our audience just to get a refresher on that. So Steve, you did the course, and then I think it was the first night you went for a walk, or you're walking back to the hotel or something.
That's right.
Right. So when did you pick up the story there?
So I had a big dinner, and I was decided to kind of walk it off. So I just went for a little walk, and I passed by this guy who looked to me to be homeless. Not that I have any, I worked around homeless for many, many years. I don't have any problem with that. But this guy was a younger guy, probably in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. And his whole head was shaved except for, I call it a warrior lock, kind of like in the back of the head, that little rectangular square near the bottom of the head, kind of the punkish type thing. And he had what looked like a glass bottle, like a 40 ouncer, and he was transferring liquid into it or out of it. And I looked at him and just, kept walking. And I don't know, a couple seconds after I pass him, I hear him behind me. And I wanted him to know that I knew he was there. So I turned and just, glanced at him so he could see I knew he was there, because I'm conditioned yellow at that moment.
Right.
And I'm walking, and I turn again, and he's now closed some distance. So he's walking faster than I am. And, I don't know if that means anything or whatever, but I just know I walked past a guy who had got up immediately after I walked past him, and he has a big bottle.
Right.
And I don't know what he intends to do. And I thought about what you had said earlier that day about choosing safety. And you know what? So what if you have to derail your plans, or you look like an idiot? Who cares?
Right.
Choose safety. And I thought about the ETM video. And so I just kind of stopped, put my hands out to my sides like, you fucking idiot. How'd you forget this?
Right.
And I just turned around, and with a determined look on my face, like I had forgotten something at my hotel room, and just went past him. And, as I walked past him, I kind of put my left hand up to my face, like to scratch an itch, but it's just something I learned long ago about, just having your defensive side hand up when you're walking past someone.
Right.
It, and just as I walked past him, I heard him mutter something. I don't know what he said. And I went back to my hotel room and I thought, maybe he was totally harmless, but
Right.
maybe he wasn't. But the beauty is I never found out, because I chose safety. Okay, my walk got cut short, but maybe I avoided getting hurt. Maybe I avoided hurting him and getting arrested.
Right.
So, and that's why the phrase, the title, "No One's Special," is so good, because it doesn't take anyone special to do that. Anyone.
Right. Hey, hang on one sec. We got something just happened with your audio.
I'm sorry.
Something just happened with your audio. It just got all messed up.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 So the last part there, because I think it cut out a little bit. We got some crazy background feedback there. But can you go back like the last 30 seconds? You remember what you're saying? Is just like
I was saying, the beauty of the whole thing is that I don't, because I chose safety, I don't know
right.
whether he was a threat or not.
Right. And that's the beauty of the system.
Anyone, the beauty of you saying, no one's special, it's totally true, because anyone could do that. Anyone can choose safety.
Right. It's a great observation. And it's one of the things that we're trying to crack this code. There's so much osmosis in the world on what constitutes self-defense, and people think you got to be a black belt, you got to break boards, you got to fight, you got to do. And what we've been doing for decades now is teaching people how to choose safety, how to think. And we always tell people, like, we're not teaching you how to fight, we're teaching you how to not fight. We're teaching you how to get to safety, we're teaching you how to choose safety, we're teaching you how to manage fear, we're teaching you how to de-escalate. And in this ever increasingly crazy world, like, I've got 3 kids and a family and a business, and I'm not interested in violence. And I never was. People think that people who are fascinated with martial arts and training all the time love violence. I abhor it, which is why I developed the program that I did. That's, I just want to kind of recap for the listeners what you did there, Steve. So we tell people, like, if you get a bad feeling about something, that the choose safety filter gets applied to every sequence of your day, of your life. And this can apply to business, relationships, and most importantly, self-defense, right? Because you can, you can rebound very quickly if you have an argument with somebody that you're in a relationship with, right? Business or family, right? You can go, man, I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. But, you can't rebound really quickly from a bottle broken over your head that goes in your eye or your neck and the glass cuts you. And so, we always tell people the ability to protect yourself or a loved one is inarguably the most important skill you could possess. But the skill set that we try to cultivate there is transcendent, and you would apply that throughout your life. You get a bad feeling about something, you turn around and address it, literally and or metaphorically, which is exactly what you did. You had a bad feeling when you walked by him. You heard some noise. He got up. There was something really incongruent. It wasn't like he was waving to a guy in front of you and going, oh, that's where he's meeting his other buddy. He had a weapon in his hand. What you did there was you trusted your intuition. The quick turn and going back the other way is what we call this pattern interrupt, where the attacker. Everyone does stuff in terms of metaphoric shapes and patterns. His idea of when he was going to attack you was a very calculated timing of him regulating his breathing, scanning for witnesses, making sure the bottle was not in his left hand, but it was in his right hand, which is his dominant hand. And I'm making this shit up. Like I've never hit somebody with a bottle in the street. But what's happening is he gets up, he starts to accelerate. He knows that, hey, in 50 feet or 10 feet, you're going to be just at the corner of this or by this alleyway. Like, it's not random. People think it's just out of nowhere he did this. No, it's almost never out of nowhere. It's very specific. You only need to kind of reverse engineer the forensics of it, if you will, right, of when he was going to move. So what happened by you stopping suddenly, you introduced a new stimulus into his whole situational awareness where he's like, what the fuck's this? This isn't like the last guy I mugged. I hit him over the head. He never even saw me coming. This guy just turned around and faced me. What's going on here? So now he's dealing with the same stuff that the average victim's dealing with, right? An emotional, psychological distraction that puts his physical plan in flux. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, definitely.
And hopefully, and so it's kind of cool is because the all the research around SPEAR is all behaviorally based and all reverse engineered from scenarios. You know, when you understand this, you're like, holy fuck, right? And so what you did by stopping and turning was create a metaphoric startle flinch in his plans, where now he's reacting to what you're doing. The fact that you turn and walk back, and I love what you did with your left hand. If any of you get our, this is super old, but we got it's a video out called "Science of the Sucker Punch," and you know we talk about that. That if I need to protect myself, or if I need to access a weapon, if I can give it some business to be where I need to put it. In your case here, you know, you start scratching your head or your ear like you've got an itch. What you've done is you've brought your left weapon up. It can be used as a start a flinch, just as a deflection. It can be used as an interception. Maybe you're going to, throw a palm strike or a quick forearm or elbow. But you put it up there. Again, putting more flux. So it was perfectly executed. And the evidence is clear because nothing happened. And what I want to talk about for a minute more is I've had so many people say to me, like, I wonder if he was going to attack me. I wonder if something was going to happen there. I guess I'll never know. And you kind of hit the nail on the head saying like, who cares? I'm safe. I'm back home with my family. Like nothing happened. At a minimum, let's say there was a confrontation and there was no physical. It's still a shock to your system, right? It ruins your night. You go back, you're ranting and raving to your wife. Were you there with one of your kids?
No.
Okay. But it's like all of this is contagious, right? You come into the seminar going, fucking the world's crazy. I almost got into this. But instead, you got exposed to a strategy and you applied it in the real world. Like that's the thing, that our stuff just works because it's based on behavior. Your attitude of who cares whether he was going to attack me or not is bang on. It's 100% right. That's what we mean by choose safety. There's no downside to choosing safety, but there's a huge downside to ignoring a pre-contact cue and then being cavalier about either your skill set or assuming the cavalry will rush in, or just cognitive dissonance, shutting it down. You could have, like, this was daylight, right? It was still daylight just after dinner. Yeah. You could have said nobody would do anything in daylight, right? Like, that's bullshit. Shit happens in daylight all the time. So,
Tony, normalcy bias kills.
Right. Yeah.
It does.
So you did everything great there. I love it. I'm just trying to think if I had one more thought on that.
By the way, I loved Jen's similar story from the last No One Special podcast. I thought what she did was at the gas station was fantastic.
Yeah, that was like almost right off the ATM thing, and that was crazy. But this is like, these stories are like, this is what I want. This is what's exciting to me about the podcast, is because if I have some like retired Navy SEAL or commando on here, or some 100th degree black belt on here, and we're talking, and he goes, yes, I once killed this man through remote viewing in another city, and going, well, fuck, you're you're like this master. Of course you did that. And I'm being facetious here, talking to like regular people who apply these stories. And I will tell you, like, there's no reason to believe that this guy wasn't going to, bust the bottle and use it as a tool of intimidation and threaten you, at jagged glass point. Give me your fucking wallet. Give me your jewelry. Give me your whatever it is, or hit you right over the head and mug you. But like it, and you know, there could be people arguing, well, no, you know, you're making an assumption. He's probably just getting up. And now, of course, in this day and age, there'll be some movement about how you're oppressing, you know, winos on the street, you know, but the bottom line is you didn't do anything violent. You did everything protective. And had something happened as you moved by him, you were actually in a much more ready state than had he sprinted while you had just, after your glance, had he sprinted up to you at that point where you're going, oh, that was fucking weird. What should I do? Like if something happens while you're in the, how should I handle this? Should I apply ATM strategy? Should I choose safety? Because now your situational awareness is compromised at that point because you're inside your head thinking about what you should do. So that was great, man. I'm really happy.
And I, you know, I really appreciated what you taught that day.
Yeah.
That was what made the difference right there.
Wow. I love hearing that. I love what these shows are about, and I can't wait to pump out more of them. Are you coming back this year to the? Oh, nice. Yeah, we got some badass stuff lined up. I don't know if you saw the outline for the new camp.
I'm looking forward to the vehicle stuff, especially.
Yeah, all stuff around a vehicle, fighting in your car, fighting outside your car pulling up, you know, to you know, gun out, get in the car, to you know, someone coming out of the car, just dissecting everything around a car. So, just in case you live anywhere where there's cars, and
yeah, and I'm in Angelino, so it's
right.
It's just cars.
Yeah, I was kind of making fun because the world has cars everywhere. You know, unless you're in if we do a course in Amsterdam or in China, we'll do it bicycle attacks. You know,
well, no, you know, sadly though, when you're in a place like LA and a lot of other cities where there are lots of cars and lots of traffic and lots of road rage,
right?
I mean, I've seen in front of me instances of people getting out of cars to go to other cars.
Right.
I remember one woman who actually got out of a car, told the guy, I'm going back to my car to get my gun. And I was waiting to see if he would shoot her first. So
crazy.
It was crazy. I mean, you don't say that to someone and not expect to get, you know,
right,
their gun out if they have one. So I'm very, I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Okay, man. Hey, this was great. Very informative. And we will get it up. I'll notify you when it shoots out. But thank you so much for making the time and jumping on this call and sharing your story.
Thank you. You know, if one person listens to this and they choose safety, it's totally worth it. And I really enjoyed speaking with you. And thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Have a good one.
Hey guys, we signed off already, but as I paused the recording, Steve asked me a really interesting question about our courageous bystander theory. And we had this really cool talk, and I thought, wow, we got to share it with you guys. So we've spliced this back in here, and there's a little bonus content. Steve, why don't you start with what was your premise and your question?
So I know that you've spoken a lot about the courageous bystander, and I think it's important to help other people, but I think people really need to bear in mind anytime they decide to join into a situation they don't know, that they're not aware of all the totality of the circumstances. And that means there's a lot of potential criminal and civil liability to think of.
Right. So without disclosing, again, your location, your practice and everything, Steve's got a legal background. You've been practicing law for a couple of decades now, right?
Right.
So he looks at this like, you know, and I didn't know this, so he kind of surprised me when we shut down the first part of the interview. We got into some neat stuff there. Without getting specific, because this is not legal advice, share like a few examples of what, you know, you see somebody, you know, attacking a woman, and you go, oh my God, I'm going to be the courageous bystander. You run into there, and what can happen 5 hours later?
As happened to a friend of mine, it could be that they're filming a movie.
That'll never happen in LA, but
exactly. Which he learned after he put the person against a wall, and people ran up and pulled him off and said, we're filming.
Right.
It could be that the woman doesn't know the man, and she initiated the attack on the man,
right,
kind of making the assumption that it's a husband or boyfriend beating up on his wife or girlfriend, and we don't know that. These are just examples that you really don't know what's going on. Most of the time, you just chance on something.
Right.
And even if you do know what's going on, you might use too much force, or you might make the situation worse. And so I think people should be courageous bystanders and help people, but to be aware that it's not always best to be the white knight. That's all.
Yeah. And so, some of the stuff that in such a litigious world, especially North America, especially America, you got to be so careful. And so here's my definition of it. As a company, I remind all of our trainers and all of our participants that we're not telling anyone what to do. We don't teach techniques. We teach tools, targets, and tactics. When a tool, your personal weapon, makes contact with a target, that's your tactic. And that'll always be improvised based on what's going on in the scenario. And we remind people that force must parallel danger. That's legal, that's ethical, that's moral. There is no defense for negligence or excessive force. And so you need to understand as much as you can. And so, excuse me, when people ask me about courageous bystander, I have a more simple definition for it. It's a philosophical definition: is if something were happening to me or my family or my kids, and there were people that could intervene and save the day, make a difference in the safety, would I want them to get involved? And the answer is obviously yes. But the courageous bystander needs to have also the skill set, the ability to recognize the danger. They need to understand fear and self-awareness. They need to go, I need to go do this right now. And people will do what they do, and we can't judge them. If you think about like everyone should know how to apply a tourniquet. Everyone should know how to stop bleeding. Everyone should understand CPR. And so if you were in a restaurant and somebody started to choke at a table near you, would you want to leave because, wow, that just ruined my meal? Man, I was looking forward to dessert, right? Or, you're going to stand there like a deer in the headlights while somebody else administers, CPR or Heimlich or whatever the heck they're doing. So it's having these like emergency skills, I think, are critical, and hopefully shows like this inspire people to look into that stuff. But specific to the courageous bystander, there's so many intangibles. If, for example, if I happen to be concealed carry and I'm in a theater, like in the Colorado shooting, but I'm there with my kids and I'm near an exit, even though I'm trained and I should rush the shooter, I should engage him, whatever theoretical fantasies going on in your mind. When the shit hits the fan, your objective as a dad is to get your kids out to safety. Right. And then at that point, decide what you're going to do. So a lot of it is always think and decide, situational awareness, self-awareness. Can I manage my fear? But full circle, courageous bystander, I just look at it as like, hey, if this were happening to my family and there was something to do, would I want something to do it? That's the call to action. At that point, you've got to, look at, and people should Google Tony Blauer knockout game. On my blog, I wrote about this. You could run into somebody who's like, in a fight on the ground, and you go to stop them, and the guy just pulled the knife and, stabs you turns around and just slashes at you. And next thing you know, you're bleeding out because you're trying to save somebody. The courageous bystander doesn't have to be a martial arts expert. The courageous bystander could, for example, you see something happening and you're in your car, you pull over, you start honking, and you roll down your window and you yell, hey, hang in there, the police are around the corner. Well, bad guys don't want to get caught. Bad guys don't want to get hurt. Bad guys don't want things to take too long. If the horn honking has because again, you get auditory exclusion and tachypsyche, as you mentioned earlier. So people, when they're in that fight, they're not aware so much of what's going on outside them. The honking horn and yelling at the person, people look up, the cops are on the way. Like that may be enough of a distraction that the person like breaks contact and leaves. Or what you did is you stop the violence from continuing. So there's different things you can do using sound, using distraction, stuff like that, where you don't need a physical skill to get in there. And again, you know, this is just like a simple example, but it's a hot topic and a heavy question, man. So we'll leave it out there.
You know, and some, you know, like I said to you, to me, some situations are going to be black and white. If I'm passing by a school and I hear gunfire and people screaming, I'm going in.
Right.
Do whatever I can, whether it's first aid or otherwise. I can't just walk by.
Right.
But the black and white situations are going to be few and far between. They're going to tend to be gray situations.
Right.
And that's the ones where I think you have to be careful. And again, I'm not saying people shouldn't take care of other people. I'm a father. Right. I would want some, you know. So I understand exactly what you're saying when you when you that
our definition is a behavioral, emotional, psychological definition. It's not. So courageous bystanders will have this skill set. Courageous bystanders will keep in their backpack this, you know, medical trauma, you know, like it's no, you courageous bystander, your skill set, the best thing you could do is maybe take a picture of a license plate. That's the courageous bystander getting involved. Is it making noise? Is it recruiting people, you know, like run next door to the restaurant next door and, you know, grab some people and yell to them, hey, we need help out here. All of those things are distractions to the bad guy, like we discussed in the first part of your talk. You know, changing the timing of the confrontation, changing the stimuli that the bad guy has to address can put their plan in flux. And that's what we want. We want to buy some doubt or instill some doubt and hesitation in the threat. That buys us time. So more food for thought. Steve, thanks for the second part of this little bonus section on courageous bystander. And I look forward to seeing you in Vegas, man.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Take care.